Life isn't perfect, and neither are we.
Nope. But we know how to face our fears
And have some fun.
and talk about all the messiest things of life.
Like the messiest things.
Get connected to yourself, get connected to others, and get connected to the life right in front of you.
This is The Connected Life with Justin and Abby.
That's me.
That's you.
And you.
It's like herding cats around here. Flipping cats to start this.
I wish that everybody who listens to the podcast,
They're all over the place.
I wish that everyone who listened to the podcast could watch the 10 minutes before we start recording because it is chaos.
Yes, absolutely. And then it's like, hi.
And we're ready. Okay,
Hello.
my favorite thing is how difficult it has been to record this podcast. It's probably going to be so good, but we got into a fight yesterday when we were supposed to record this podcast. So then we thought, oh, let's do a live marriage counseling session with Pietze and Johnny. But we were too f***ed up.
It was
We
actually
were
great. We just
too-
couldn't land the ship.
We
We
were
were
about
too
5
messed up.
minutes.
Yeah.
5 minutes from landing the plane, but we overshot the
Yep,
landing
yep,
strip
yep.
and we went straight
We
into
went
the
straight
ocean.
back up into the ocean.
We had an amazing breakthrough, but we thought nobody wants to watch 4 hours talking through all of our deep issues. But so today we're going to talk about something I feel very excited about it because I think it's revolutionary. It's a whole new way to view relationships that will set you up for success in a complete. And really, sometimes it takes just a little bit of a tweak. Sometimes if you just look at things from a slightly different angle, or you begin to interact in a slightly different way, you can see massive results.
Absolutely.
And so I'm really excited about today's episode. This is The Connected Life with Justin and Abby. But Johnny and Pietze are
Hello.
two of our closest friends. And I've known Pietze for 33 years, which
Let's
is
not
gross.
say that number out loud.
And I love her dearly. And then we both got married to the love of our lives, our soulmates.
Verdict's still out on that one. TBD.
And then we thought marriage would be great. And it ended up being complicated because we all were really screwed up humans.
When we were dreaming about our marriages and our weddings as young girls do, most young girls, I should say, we didn't account for how effed up it would all be. We really, how hard it would be, how complicated it would be, how messy it would be. That wasn't part of the fantasy, honestly.
Yeah. And here's the truth. I wish they taught relationship tools in high school. You know what I don't use? Algebra. Yeah.
Trigonometry, all that
Geometry, none of that.
garbage.
You know what I could have used? Some really practical tools like we're going to talk about today that will shape the rest of your life. Yeah. So I really wish that. So Pietze and Johnny have been our marriage buddies. We've both fought like hell to get to a good place inside marriage. Don't you think?
It's been a violent war. I think one of the beautiful things about having you guys in the trenches with us is that we have known each other for so long. And so there's both compassion. Like if I get a call from Johnny and he's just like venting about you, I'm like, I totally love Pietze. And I totally have like a different belief system on her that's beyond her being some villain or something like that. And
but
so,
you can also empathize with Johnny
because
you're like, I get it.
empathize.
I'm married to the same one.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
And so there's that camaraderie and that support.
Yeah.
And there's a constant desire for you guys to learn and grow. And that's inside of us. And so
I think it's been
saved both of our marriages. I
It's
think.
saved our marriages, and it feels so incredible now to see the fruit of what we've fought for, being able to impact other people.
Yeah.
And Pietze and Johnny just did a marriage conference, and they had so many incredible things that happened in that conference. And so we're going to talk today a little bit. I'll just let you guys jump in. Why don't you give a quick recap for new listeners about your relationship, and then we'll jump into how to change your whole relationship.
How to change it all in 1 hour.
Yeah.
Stay tuned.
Yep.
So I'm Pietze. This is Johnny.
I'm Johnny.
We've been married for 17 years. We have 2 really awesome kids. One of our children is autistic and special needs, and that's been a huge part of our relationship. The divorce rate for
Special
families
needs parents
is like
really
80%,
high.
I think.
That makes
So
sense.
on top of all of the stuff we've been through, that's been a huge stressor to our relationship. But in that 17 years, we got married really young. We were insanely in love. I don't think anyone could have convinced us out of not getting married. But while we were getting married, my life fell apart. And that led to me having being in trauma. And like literally month 1 of our marriage, my life fell apart. I went into a huge attachment crisis. And that completely changed not only the dynamic of our relationship, but the trajectory of it too.
Yeah.
Because the whole foundation of our relationship, and I think a lot of couples find themselves like they get married and then like year 1, they're like, what happened? And if you start adding, one of the things we say is your relationship is only as good as the stress it can endure.
Yeah.
Right?
Good.
So good.
Because you start
Yeah.
adding more and more stress and suddenly it bottoms out. And we just found ourselves finally, Johnny was a touring musician in a band. And we found ourselves at a place where basically I was losing my mind as a mom, stay-at-home mom. He was gone. It ended with him having to leave his dream to come be a family man, which was hard. That was a big sacrifice of his life. And us then being around each other all the time and realizing, oh, our relationship, not so great. Not so great. This thing, not so great. I think we could hide it with the distance for a long time, right?
Yeah.
And we had a weird entanglement where we were really codependent and we couldn't actually be honest with each other because that would just cause a fight or one of us would get upset. So we just kind of managed in this entanglement, And I would say for like 10 years, honestly, the last 10 years of our relationship has been trying to figure out, it's been tough, but trying to figure out how to make it, trying to figure out how to actually have a relationship that we set out for and not wanting to give up on each other, but it being incredibly difficult, but in the process, finding breakthrough and ended up being now that we help couples. We're not fixed by any means. We are still learning. We will always learn. We always say everybody's difficult to be in relationship with.
Absolutely.
We are assholes to each other. We are difficult to be in relationship with. We are lifelong learners alongside of that.
Yes.
In our humanity.
And I wish this is something that everybody could actually start to accept.
Yeah.
Is all of us as humans are complicated. We're complex. None of us are easy to love in every circumstance. All of us, when we're triggered, do weird things to protect ourselves.
Yeah.
All of us, when we're triggered, have self-protection that might hurt the people around us.
Yes.
And all of us have self-protection that comes up without us even consciously choosing it.
Most of us don't even realize the places that we're difficult. We think we're the easy ones and everyone else is difficult or complicated or messed up. And there's such a beauty in owning your own humanity that changes the game.
Yeah.
It's so necessary to shatter the illusion of having it all together, which is what we're all oftentimes in our fear of shame.
Yeah.
Is I'm going to hide in this illusion that I have it.
Yeah.
together.
And if I'm the good one, then you're the bad one. I can just push you away from me, or I can blame you to try to fix the pain that I'm in.
Yeah.
Most people, if you say, I'm actually a part of co-creating this, I'm actually a part of the difficultness of our interactions. My energy that I'm contributing, my words that I'm contributing is part of what is making this complicated.
Yep.
That doesn't feel good because then you have to have shame and ownership, but it actually feels relieving.
Yeah.
Because you can transform what you own.
Absolutely. It's one of the most empowering places to be inside of your inside of your life.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Johnny, just to give a little extra background on your story, Johnny, you were strongly avoidant. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was really strongly avoidant from early on. I think
attachment.
a lot of what we're going to talk about today surrounds the topics of attachment theory, surrounds the topics of what our parents taught us, either intentionally or unintentionally, about how to do relationship. And I do think that we're at a time right now in society where things are evolving and changing in relationships. For thousands of years, humans have had these set structures of how relationships work, and they don't depend on emotions, right? And we're in this evolution point
Right.
where we're all trying to figure it out. And so we go down these trails of like, okay, it's all about seeing pain, or it's all about healing trauma, or it's all about these things. How do we set up a relationship that works? And for me, like one of the things that I've been really deeply confronting lately inside myself is I have a lot of, my daughter's autistic. I have a lot of autistic tendencies inside of myself that are a little difficult to look at. And one of them is the need to perform. Like I'm an island. And not just in the attachment sense.
Which is an insecure avoidant.
Yes, but not even just in an attachment sense.
Yeah.
In like I am alone inside of myself.
Yeah.
And my relationships with you, with other people have all been performance driven, based on mirroring, based on I need to show up in a certain way in order for you to like me as a friend or as a spouse or whatever. And a lot of what we're talking about today, and I think what most people want when they get into marriage, is a place where they can be themselves and be accepted, something they didn't have in childhood.
Yeah.
If you think of what you had in childhood, were you allowed to have a voice? Were you allowed to get your needs met easily? Could you count on that? Right? Did you have a home where you could say, I have a need, and more often than not, it would get met?
Right.
When you made a bid for connection, would that be met? When you had a voice about something in your personality that was different than what your parents liked, were they okay with that? Was love removed? A lot of us didn't have those things in childhood. And so we choose to hide, we choose to perform, we choose to cope with those things by putting up a front that everybody else will be okay with, which we call mirroring. And those of us who have more autistic tendencies do that really flawlessly, and we don't even know that we're doing it. So that's something I've been confronting in myself. And I think as we delve into the concept of how do you set up a marriage in a way that works, it has to be surrounding the context that you are allowed to be a human, I'm allowed to be a human, and love is not going to be removed because of imperfections or because of stepping out of line. So which is easier said than done. It's much easier said than done because it takes a lot of guts to show up authentically like that. And it takes a lot of guts to love somebody who's doing things that hurt you, despite their humanity.
Don't tune out right there if you got triggered by what he just said, because we're actually going to give very practical steps that create, because what you just said almost sounds like there's no guidelines. Then I just have to love somebody no matter how much they hurt me or what they do. And there's no boundaries. They're just allowed to. And that's not actually what we're talking about. And
That's
we're gonna give a bunch of bumpers.
Yeah.
To help you learn how to navigate. Like, yes, acceptance is the goal, but we have some bumpers that makes that so that it's not crushing you to accept someone.
Well, it's less about acceptance than it is about authenticity.
Yeah.
Right? It's about, and I agree. There's bumpers around that. We don't just accept every little behavior from each other, but it's about what we signed up for when we got into marriage.
Yeah.
Right? Like the love exchange where you can actually be loved for you.
Yeah.
And you can show up authentically.
Yeah. And
there's room for that, and I will say in our marriage, from early on, that wasn't the case, not from my standpoint. And I'm realizing one of the really humbling things that I've had to realize recently is it's not because Pietze is a pain in the ass. A big part of it is because I was choosing not to show up authentically because in my mind, I didn't believe that was the way you did relationships.
Right. Totally.
The way you did relationships was trying to do your best all the time.
And just try to make it work.
Like if you're upset, I'm trying to meet that all the time. I'm trying to fix it. I'm trying to do it's all performance driven. How can I try harder?
Right.
Yeah.
Which ultimately led to burnout and frustration.
And resentment. Like, okay, I'm doing all the right things, but I resent you for making me do all the right things.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
So scientifically, they say relationships have 3 phases. The first one is like the fantasy, dream, excitement, falling in love.
You're the best ever.
Woo! Yeah, I like you so much.
Yeah.
And then and these phases can last different amounts of time. So some people, the initial sparks can last like a year or 2. Some people it lasts like a week.
Well,
and
then Can I chime in on that just for 1 second? For those of you who don't read a ton of self-help books and stuff, you need to know that scientifically in that phase, you're actually on drugs. And
Your brain is
like,
pumping different chemicals in the first stage of your relationship that helps you seal the deal.
It's not a joke. There's actually like stuff going to your brain that's making you overlook the bad stuff and making you focus on the good stuff and making you show up.
I see no red flags.
Yes.
I'm high as a kite.
Glasses. They're perfect.
You
They're
are my
amazing.
soulmate.
You're everything.
You're everything I've ever wanted.
Then
You're so much better than everyone else that I did.
Totally, 100%.
Then phase
You're
2.
nothing
Then
like my
phase
family.
2 hits, and
I
they
hate you.
they're starting to become like your family, and suddenly all the triggers come out.
Yeah, phase 2 is the negotiation of needs. And this happens in every relationship, whether it's romantic or friendship, where you're literally like, whose needs are going to get met and how are they going to get met?
Yeah.
That is and it becomes a battle. And this is, honestly, this is where most marriages spend their entire marriage.
Yes.
Up until they're done.
Is fighting.
Divorce.
Yeah. And then it can land in a divorce because it's like a tug of war. Wait, is my need for attachment going to get met or your need for autonomy going to get met? Is my need for words of affirmation going to get met or your need for acts of service? Like it's a constant, we are battling. We have these needs and we're like, who's going to get their needs
are gonna
met?
get
Yes.
And so like in your case, you're saying you just tried to meet all of Pietze's needs.
Yeah.
That was your
So we had
because
hold on just
Go ahead,
1 second. It's the mathematic equation you had was like if I meet all of Pietze's needs, the marriage will work.
yes.
But the equation doesn't work. Yeah.
Because in that phase, like in the infatuation phase, the drugs are pumping in and you're trying to put your best foot forward, but your brain gets tired.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, when you commit, those drugs turn off. Like when you
Yes.
get married or whatever, those drugs turn off because your body says you've sealed the deal.
Mm-hmm.
You're now going to procreate. You're doing your job as a
Yes.
human. And when those drugs shut off, your brain realizes it's a lot of work to be intentional.
Mm-hmm.
And so you go into a process of automation where you're automating your behavior and the other person. And so for me, my automatic response was trying.
Yes. Well, and I love what you're saying. It's so valuable to talk about in general, which is when you start living with somebody or you get married, you go into now home base is where you don't have to show up and perform like you do for the world. So in dating, even if you're living together right away, you're still in that zone. The chemicals are telling you to be on your best behavior.
totally.
Once you settle down to the next phase of relationship, you are like too exhausted to be on your best behavior around your person.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people get married and they're like, you're a completely different person than who I thought I was dating. What happened to you pursuing me all the time?
Yeah.
What happened to you being fun and playful?
Yeah.
What
Brushing your teeth and using deodorant or whatever it is.
Well, and we tell people, we're like, that's exactly what happens is you get sloppy because the brain can't run off using that much energy in a relationship. So you automate. The problem is we get too sloppy.
Yes.
We automate too much. We let natural reactions from our past, from our family, from the way we related to siblings or parents start to come in and take over. And we find ourselves stuck in that phase that you were talking about,
Yes.
which is we're trying to figure it out and how we meet each other's needs, but we just get stuck there in an entanglement. So our subconscious entanglement was, I have all of the needs. Because what I do in relationship is signal a lot. Hey, I need that.
I need this.
Hey, I want that. Hey, relationship, that matters to me. And his subconscious agreement was, great, you can have all the needs, I'll have none. So I'll vacate the relationship. And I was like, and I'll take over the whole relationship.
Yes.
And we just went round and round for years and years and years like that in this subconscious agreement that we didn't even realize we were doing.
Totally.
You know?
The third phase is secure, safe love. And that is what we're about to jump into, which is what you guys are moving out of. Instead of the negotiating needs part, you guys have begun the process of creating secure love through secure functioning. So do you guys want to describe a little bit about what that's like? And then we're going to give you guys practical steps to it.
Yeah. So basically, when we use the term secure functioning in its most basic form, it's basically learning how to function securely in the relationship.
Like if you want to use other words for those two terms, like functioning is day to day. When you think of the word functioning, it's like day to day, how things work, how the business runs, how the house runs. It's operational, you know, and secure, you could replace that with safe or, I don't
Productive.
know.
Well, and really that's what it is, because what is it's taking two individuals and it's honoring each other's individuality. Okay. So before we were codependent, right? Because I'm constantly trying to micromanage him. Okay. Because and he's withdrawing and we're both just codependent towards each other. Into interdependence, which is we depend on each other for survival. We depend on each other to make this thing work, but we honor that we're two individuals that have two separate needs and function two different ways. The way that Johnny and I would naturally live are completely opposite than each other.
100%.
I think most
you guys
people
don't know anything about that.
Yeah. So how do you make a relationship work when you have two people
who need different things to feel safe,
to feel good?
And not just different things that are like in opposition to each other.
Yes.
Right? It's not like I need apples and you need oranges or whatever. It's like my needs actually hurt you, cause you anxiety, cause you problems, and vice versa.
Our entire marriage. Like Justin needed the house clean to feel less anxiety. And I needed the house to be able to be messy,
relaxed,
to cause less anxiety. He needed to be on time to cause less anxiety.
I
needed to be late to cause less anxiety. Yes. Like, and that's what we're talking about, the collision of needs.
With each other's needs.
Because we didn't have the concept that we're going to talk about. It became like either you have anxiety or I have anxiety. Yeah. And so now
there's a winner and a loser.
Yes. Yeah, there's always a winner and loser. Like who wins this time or who wins this battle. And what we're talking about is valuing each other's differences and learning how to collaborate well together. Learning how to become a team. And a lot of people think, because we work with couples all day long who are in, hard marriage situations, and they think, and they've heard our story about how we saw each other's pain and we worked on attachment and everything was good. And in a lot of ways it healed a lot, but we kept hitting bumps in the road where we're like, we can't function together. Yeah. Like we love each other and we want to be with each other. We want to grow old together. We want to raise children together, but we don't know how to function together. And that keeps erupting in fights until we realized, we're missing a whole key element. It's not just about having good love or learning each other's, love languages, which is great. I love all that, but that's not going to always fix the day-to-day practical issues.
You need some actual guidelines and core values that you can follow to help create guards. I used this analogy yesterday in the podcast we threw out, but about bumper out, like when you're going bowling, the bumper guards that come up to help the ball stay in the lane.
Yes.
That is what relationships need. They need some guidelines
so we can help get the ball into the goal. Like we have a goal of making it to the end. So let's put some bumpers up to ensure that we can do that.
Yeah.
Well,
and I'll say this, when me and Justin went through a really hard season in marriage, to me, the only way safety was restored was to come up with a new way to function together.
Yeah.
It wasn't just like, yes, you could apologize all day long for what you've done in our past. I could apologize all day long. But if we don't find a new way to relate, a new way to function, then we are just going to... Repetitive pain is maddening if you don't have a plan for what to do with it.
Chinese water torture.
Yeah, totally. And I think a lot of people... I want to say this too, because I think a lot of people will relate to this in marriage, which is, I felt constantly nervous because, I felt like I did have all the needs all the time. Right. And he just kind of was like, just keep the peace. I don't have any needs. So I felt constantly insecure when something would come up that was an issue for me or that I struggled with, so that I could bring it up confidently and know it wasn't going to cause a fight or make him withdraw from me more. So I would live in anxiety. When do I bring it up? How should I bring it up? Maybe I can just let it go. I should probably just let it go. And inevitably that would cause a fight, right? Because I come into the situation more charged. He then feels overwhelmed by my emotions, right? And it erupts into a fight. Like we don't have that confidence that we can just take something and work it out. And what secure functioning does is go, it's safe for me to be honest, and it's safe for him to be honest. And within that honesty, we figure out how to make it work together.
So let's talk through, I know you have an analogy that I think explains secure functioning well.
Yeah.
And then let's talk through the 5 things we're going to talk about. So
I forgot about the analogy.
Know what we're
like.
I want them to be able to practically think through, I can change this in my relationship.
Yes, that's great. So one of the things that we teach people, and this changed the game for both of us when we were learning how to do this, and it's what we teach our clients, is we say, look, when you're doing marriage, it's not about, a lot of people teach like, my job is not to be focused on myself, but to be focused on him. And his job is to be focused on me.
Oof.
Now, maybe some marriages work that way, and that's great. If that works for you, more power to you. What we tell people is a paradigm shift. Rather than focusing just on me and my needs or focusing on him and his needs, we both focus on a third party thing, which is the relationship. Both of our job is to protect, care for, nurture, and grow the relationship. And we've decided that we are
kind of
both
like something you're nurturing, like a plant.
Like a plant.
Yeah. So we tell people it's like a plant. Imagine your relationship. Like I always think of How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. Like, here's our relationship fern. Like the cheesy girl who buys a relationship fern. The relationship fern, the relationship plant. Our job is both to care for this plant together. And the only way that this plant thrives, okay? The only way that this plant thrives is with a pH balance of 50% Johnny and 50% me. That's what the water has to look like.
Mm-hmm.
That pH balance has to be like that. No, there are seasons where maybe sometimes I take up a little bit more, or he takes, like I'm sick and he's having to do more to care for the relationship. And that's okay for a season, but it's going to be really hard for the rest of our lives. Not that you can't do it,
Sure.
but it's going to be hard. It can be off, but it mainly needs to keep this pH balance of 50%. And why we say that is because what it helps you to do is stay an individual and a team in the midst of that. So my job is always to make sure that I'm showing up with my 50%, because that's how that plant is going to thrive. And to make sure that I am making room for his 50%.
Right.
And he's doing the same thing. You know? And so by focusing on that third party thing, it helps us to operate as though, hey, are you caring for this? Yes. Are you caring for it? Yes. Okay, now how do we work out how we care for this?
So, because what I hear you say is like, okay, I'm not just thinking, how can I make Pietze happy if I'm Johnny? Or I'm not just trying to think, how can I make Abby happy? Or how can I get my needs met? It's, I see the reality of there is a relationship that I want it thriving. There are elements that are necessary for this to thrive. And I know that those elements take, part of it is me inside of it and her inside of it. So at every crossroad, when you're questioning how you're showing up, you're like, but does it benefit the relationship? It's not, does it benefit me? It's not, does it benefit her? It's, does it benefit the relationship, the well-being? And is there parameters, which you were talking about, that help us foster that well?
Yeah. So even inside of conflict, okay, we can't leave the conflict until there's a great pH balance of 50% where we both walk away feeling like, did you feel like you got your needs met and felt seen? Yes. Did you? Yes. Great. We kept the pH balance. If we walk away and I feel good, but he doesn't, that plant's not going to thrive.
And when you're talking 50-50, that means there are areas that we feel like we're both losing and we're both winning in the compromise and the negotiations and stuff that you're going to get into.
That
but
means I'm going to have to compromise a little bit, and it's just going to be good enough. I'm going to get my needs met good enough, because that means I'm going to have to compromise and I'm going to get my needs met.
Right.
But it's the recognizing, if I don't get my needs met, I will end up causing problems for the relationship. And if I only care about my needs met, that will cause problems for the relationship. And so it's a natural balance. It's kind of similar to what God said, love your neighbor as yourself, which is that natural balance of, you have to hold on to caring about yourself and caring about another person at the same time. And this is really difficult. And I think for a long time, I only knew how to care about one person's need at a time. So it was either and when Justin had hurt me, it was like, you have to meet my needs because I am so hurt. Or when he had problems, I have to meet his needs. Instead of that, we are looking for how do we come together where both of our needs are met.
Yeah.
So we have 5 different things that we're going to talk through.
Yeah. So this can involve a lot of things, but we've kind of broken it into like 5 main things
for these podcasts.
Yeah. Yeah. So you have to remind me of what the first one is that we
regulating our nervous systems.
Yeah. So the first one really is regulating our nervous systems. I know you guys talk about nervous system a lot. Understanding how to regulate not only our individual nervous systems, but each other's. Because when you get married, you actually share a nervous system. So when he's off, I feel it. When I'm off, he feels it. Because, and it's a messed up thing and a beautiful thing, right? Because it can really mess you up because it's easy to get codependent.
Yeah.
When the other person's off and you're like, what did I do? Or why are they
off?
off?
How can I control them?
Yeah.
So I can
how
feel
can
better?
I get them back? You know, but we manage our entire life this way. We manage our kids this way. How's the central nervous system of the home? How are people doing? Because we realize when there's regulation in the home, everything operates better.
Oh, 100%.
And you have to be a student of your spouse. Like, that's a big part of regulation because, you know, we talk about attachment theory. I'm sure you guys have talked about that on here. But why do we do behavior that's not natural to us? It's for the sake of the other nervous system because we're looking for win-wins, right? Like we were talking about with the plant. We're looking for situations where both nervous systems walk away feeling good enough. And so why would I ever do anything that's not natural to me? It's because I value her nervous system equally as I value my own.
Yeah.
Now that can get messed up in a lot of different ways, right? You can get people who are only focused on their own nervous system.
Yep.
You can get people like myself who don't focus at all on their nervous system and completely self-abandon, right? And neither are helpful.
Totally.
But
both create problems with nervous systems.
Yes.
Because if you're getting dysregulated by meeting all of her nervous system needs, then you're contributing dysregulation to the relationship.
Yes,
exactly.
And it can sound like codependence, like, oh, I'm responsible for your emotions. Well, I would say to some degree you are if you're married. Not responsible for making them feel something, but you do have a certain level of responsibility to the plant.
Right.
To the
you
fact
that you affect.
I affect her.
I affect this plant. I affect her.
And what she needs might be different than what I need. And I'm going to be a student of that. And for instance, like a one for us that I have had to learn is Pietze has dyslexia. And if I make too many jokes about her misspelling things or like, that's not great.
Yeah,
it's not great.
Actually can,
and that doesn't make any sense to me because I make tons of self-deprecating jokes about myself all the time, and I'm super sarcastic.
Yeah,
but it doesn't have to make sense to me because I value her nervous system. I don't want to set that off. My silence sets her off. I love silence.
Silence is great. My body can only handle so much silence before it starts to become dysregulating.
And my body can only handle so much conversation.
Yep. And
so we work together.
We work together because a lot of times I need to verbally process stuff. I want to connect. I want to know how your day is. I want to, and that's what makes me feel safe. It's what makes me feel good. And that matters. But if I talk too much, he starts to feel dysregulated in his nervous system.
And that's not good for her.
And if he starts to feel dysregulated, I start to feel insecure.
Because I distance and I get quiet.
Yep, because then he needs space. So I recognize that helping him feel safe within the confines of what I need actually benefits me.
Yeah.
So working together on nervous system regulation is
and you guys have actually negotiated needs together really well, even in this specific instance, which Johnny will say sometimes, I have 30 minutes of time that I can talk for. Is this what you want to talk about in these 30 minutes? So you'll be like, I can give you.
You set parameters.
Yeah. And that's negotiating what you're doing is you're negotiating a win-win for both nervous systems.
Yes.
I have 30 minutes before I will start to become dysregulated in a way that affects the relationship plant. You need something from the silence. So I can give you this, but I can't give you more than that.
And in all reality, there's another level to me learning her as my spouse and collaborating, which is that whenever I say I've got X amount of minutes, in my mind, I know that it's going to be double that. No, I'm being honest. Like, because I know
He's
Pietze,
like,
and I know
hey, I need you to wrap this up in 10 minutes. It's going to be 20.
I know it's going to be 20. I've made my peace with that.
So
and
you've learned how to set boundaries so that when she does need that extra 10 minutes,
He's
don't
already
feel
accounted
angry.
for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he'll even remind me. And I've learned how to
And-
not take it personally.
Yeah.
When he says, now I will say, because most women are like, oh my gosh, I can't imagine him saying I can only have, but
You can only talk for 10 minutes.
yeah, totally. But here's the cool thing is that I've recognized it actually keeps him feeling safe in our relationship, which keeps him attached to me.
Mm-hmm.
So then after a conversation, it's not like he goes and falls off the face of the planet for a day or two because he's so overdone.
Yes.
He then takes a little space and then comes back and gives me a hug because he feels good again. And so, and it's not like, here's the truth. Sometimes it hurts my feelings. It's true. Like sometimes I'm in the middle of talking and I really want to
Yes.
say other things. And he'll say, hey, I really only have 10 minutes. And I'll just be honest and be like, that kind of hurts my feelings, but I also know that this is what you need to do. I just needed to share that. And he's like, I know. I wish that I had more in my, like, I actually wish that this is what I could give you. And then I feel safe again because I'm
Yes.
like, oh, I know your heart,
Yes.
you know?
You care. He cares. He
Yeah.
doesn't have capacity.
Oh,
Yep,
we
but
do
he still
this.
gets the boundary. He
Yeah.
still gets the boundary.
We
And
do
I
the
still
same
get to
thing.
share my feelings, which is
Yes.
just what I needed.
I mean, this has revolutionized our marriage because so many of the times that I had hurt feelings is I went to Justin with this deep thing or this vulnerable thing or this thing that was really important to me. And I didn't ask if he had the capacity
No,
or was
it's
ready.
like one of those Tommy guns in the old
Yeah.
school films.
Yes. And Justin's
But the
like,
bullets are words.
And so I would come and be like, just open up this deep thing. And he would not respond well. And it would hurt so bad
yeah.
because it's something so vulnerable or meaningful to me.
Yes.
And so what we've had to do is negotiate, like, again, the third party. This is not about, do you love me or not? This is about what can both of our nervous systems handle. So I often will say, I have something I'd like to process. Do you have the capacity right now to hear it and respond well?
yeah.
And then he checks in with his system. Do I have capacity? And there are, so I'd say 50% of the time you say no.
Yeah. And with that, no, I'm also like, at this moment, I don't have that capacity. If you want 30 minutes from now or an hour from now, I'm happy to take the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
I
Johnny
just-
does that too. Give me a little alone
because
time.
I'm finding a spot because I want her to get that need met and I'm going to negotiate with it.
Let me go
Yeah.
cold plunge. Let me go do some Wim Hof breathing and get in the headspace.
Or let me finish being checked out on my phone
Yeah.
for 30
Yes.
minutes because today was an intense day and I need to recover before I am present, or I don't feel good right now and I don't have the capacity for a deep talk, or I just got done with 3 long conversations.
And what you've done is a good job, not of not having hurt feelings. You have hurt feelings still at times, but like Pietze said, like, oh, I'm kind of bummed. I wanted to talk right now, but you're not putting them on me.
Mhm.
You're
Yeah.
not like, oh, I have hurt feelings. You're a terrible human being that you can't do this. You're
I'm
like,
not
oh,
blaming
but also
There's
him.
no
not
blame in
shoving
it,
them down.
but you're not shoving
They
it
get
down.
to be they get to be valued and
Yeah.
there, but they don't dominate.
And I've come to the ability, because I used to not be okay with her not being okay.
yeah, totally.
I'm like, oh no, I'm terrible. I'm a bad husband if she's
Yeah.
not okay. And I'm like,
That would trap you.
yeah. And now I feel peaceful. Like, yeah, it's okay for her to have bad feelings. It's not that I don't care about her.
Yes.
It's that I'm okay with her having that
Yes.
experience and working through
because
that.
you've depersonalized it.
Correct.
It doesn't become about,
Correct.
do you value me?
Yeah.
We 100% value each other, but we recognize we value each other's nervous systems.
Yes.
Within that. And so when you can't do something, it's not a reflection of how you care about me.
Yeah.
It's about your own even anatomy
Mhm.
that functions differently than mine.
yeah.
Oh, yeah. We just did a conflict mini conference. And so we had to work on it. And typically in the past, working together has felt
Torture.
horrifying to us because what causes me anxiety, I have so many learning disabilities and problems. What causes me anxiety is what he wants to do.
Yeah.
How I communicate, how we'll work through
Mhm.
forming structures.
So he wants to like plan the whole thing
Yeah.
and then
that would be me too.
and that is like so overwhelming for me. And so what we did this time is he was like, what if we spend 10 minutes doing a vague outline. And then you can go work on the weeds on this thing. I'll go work on this thing and we'll come back together. And what it was we'll spend a little bit of time doing the thing that causes you anxiety, but then we'll do the thing that you love doing. And this is how we both can work together.
It's like collaborated.
And the concept is our nervous system together matters.
Yeah.
How can both of us be getting what we need to get together?
Yeah, totally. Because you realize, again, when the nervous system, when both people are in their window of tolerance, their nervous system is regulated, relationship functions well.
Yeah.
The house functions well. There's peace. So there becomes a value system around keeping that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And just for clarity for people, if you're just listening, your nervous system is the network of, it's how you take in with your 5 senses what's going on around you.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's your body's messaging system that sends messages to your body to react in all different kinds of ways. And when we have a regulated nervous system, we kind of call it like the green zone is a simple way to you feel the most at peace. You feel
relaxed.
You feel like you can handle your emotions. You can handle
circumstances.
You can handle circumstances. When you start, then we talk about the red zone is when you go into fight or flight. We use the blue zone is when you go into freeze. So whenever we get activated outside, when we're talking about our window of tolerance and being regulated, our goal is if we can stay in the green zone, we typically don't fight.
Yeah, you can make powerful decisions.
If a conflict comes up, we can work through it very fast in the green zone.
Yes.
It's as soon as one of us has gotten into a fight or flight reaction or a freeze reaction where our emotions are built, our body is actually feeling anxiety
tension.
Or panic or tension or overwhelm.
Yes.
And now we're having reactions to try to manage what our body is sending as signals. And that's what we're talking about in balancing the nervous system.
Yeah, totally.
Well, and I think that when you're working on co-regulating both of your nervous systems in the negotiation phase, you want to be thinking, what can I do to make this better for the other person's nervous system? Yeah. Like for you, Justin, if you're saying, I don't want to talk right now, there's a big difference between saying, I don't want to talk right now and saying, hey, I actually really value what you're saying.
Yes.
I don't feel like it's going to go well if we do it in this moment because I'm kind of in my head's a little stressed out. I actually really value what you're saying. I need to go get myself in a good headspace.
Yes.
There's a big difference between those two, and it's specific to each person.
Right. I'm concerned with what message I'm sending and how I'm sending it. It doesn't mean I don't send a message. It's that I'm concerned about.
I'm considering.
I'm considering you inside of it and how I know that it's going to land. And I'm like, oh, I know it would stress her out completely if I deliver it in this way.
If she feels rejected, it's going to feel.
I don't want to talk about that right now.
Activate her nervous system, send her into hyperarousal.
Yeah.
And that's going to come back on me bad, right? That's going to dysregulate the whole
I'm not going to get what I want to accomplish.
So I keep everything with intention of how do I keep this plan functioning well? How do I keep us both in our window? And still be honest and be authentically myself.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And really, we're talking about looking for win-wins.
Yes.
And most people when we're triggered, we go into black and white thinking, which is it's either I win and you lose or you win and I lose. But in relationship, there's almost always a secret option C.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where we can find a way that both of our needs can be met somehow. Good enough.
Yes.
And this isn't about a loss of autonomy.
No.
And this isn't about exerting control.
Yeah.
In any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
This is actually a liberating thing. So like when I'm considering the reality of her system, how she functions, it's not about me just being like, how do I control her? Or I can't actually be me in this. I'm like, no, I can fully be me. It's just, how do I deliver me well?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
And what are the ways I can meet her in her needs so that I can be myself over here in these things? So like there's ways of, if I help him pick up the house at night, that brings his anxiety down.
Totally.
Yeah.
That means he has more space for me being late.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't naturally think like, I should, in your truest natural self, you wouldn't think, I should value picking up the house before I go to bed.
No.
But you do it because you care about the nervous system of the home. You care about him. And then he cares for you well, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which to me, I like to pose the question to people, why are you married? Why? What is the reason? Is it for fun? Is it for love? Is love the reason you're married? Prior to this moment in time, survival was the reason that you got married.
Yes.
You need to have a reason why you're married that's good for you selfishly. I like to think of like a couple out on the plains, like homesteaders or something. They stay married because it's good for their survival. It's good for them
selfishly.
Selfishly, me personally. And so, not to throw another analogy in the mix, but I like to think of it because marriage should be something that gives you life. Originally, marriage was intended as a survival mechanism. It's the smallest form of society, right? Like two people have an agreement between each other. But in marriage as survival, like an analogy would be, we have this pure watering hole that we both drink out of, and we will both die if we don't have this water. If we don't both tend to it, and if we're both putting toxic waste into it, we will both die. It's necessary for life. It's necessary to stay alive. And when it comes to secure functioning, which is what we're talking about, it is really important to be able to recognize that it is a selfish act, but not in a bad way, in a good way. This relationship needs to bring life to me. And I need to set it up in a way that it does bring life to me. And I need to take care of it in a way that it continues to bring life to me and to her.
Which requires sacrifice at times on your side, right?
Which requires sacrifice at times.
If I expect this relationship to give me life, it means I'll have to sacrifice something for it to grow it as well.
To maintain it.
Yeah.
And he expects the same out of me. I expect you to sacrifice at times in order to keep this plant alive, in order to function well.
Because you need me to help you, right? And so if all we're doing is I'm never drinking water and I'm dying of thirst, when I finally die, that's not going to be good for you. No. You know what I mean? You're always downstream of each other. Right. In every interaction, you are downstream of each other. So if you walk out on the end of an interaction and it does not go well for the other nervous system, it will come back to bite you in the ass sooner or later.
We want to blame people for that. We want to be like, you're punishing me because it didn't end well.
You're whatever.
And it's just actually human reality. If something ends poorly, you're going to have pain. And that means it's going to not be resolved.
If that pain has nowhere to go,
yeah.
It's going to come back to affect you negatively. And it is really important to switch our mentality that this is not just about pleasure. This is actually good for me. It is good for me to take care of you, and it is good for you to take care of me.
Can you give a practical example of a time where you do something selfishly?
Well, yeah, there's a great Brene Brown quote that she talks about where like her and her husband come home from work, the 80-20 thing where it's like, oh, I had a really tough day. I only have 20% left. And the other one's like, okay, I am doing fine. I can meet you in that.
I can make up for the 80.
Yeah.
There's a lot of situations where I won't be feeling in the mood to talk, and Pietze will come and she'll have something that she needs to process her day with work. This is a very common one. I don't like talking about work. She loves talking about work. And I know that if left unmet too long, that will cause problems.
Like if you don't talk long enough, then she will get...
If it's like 5 nights in a row where every night I'm like, peace, I'm going to the basement. I can't do this. That's not going to go well for her nervous system. And then she'll escalate and then we'll get in a fight because I haven't been taking care of it.
And by escalate, my nervous system, I'll start getting more anxious. I'll start feeling more edgy because I have anxiety.
There's energy inside of her that's left undealt with.
It's not coming out yelling right away. Oftentimes, I think this is important for people. It starts with just, I feel on edge.
Yeah.
I feel like I don't matter. I'm looping a little bit in my head.
So often what I will do is I will take a moment and ask myself, can I give more than 50%? There's a time and a place where things don't have to be even in marriage. Things are never going to be perfectly even.
Yeah, totally.
You just have to be getting to 100%, and it can't all be on one person all the time.
Right, we're shooting for 50.
We're shooting for 50, but it's not always going to be that. And so I'm always asking myself, can I push myself here? She needs connection. Can I push myself? And so, that's sticky. It can be really complicated at times, but it's a constant real-time evaluation of where am I at? Is this going to come at too big of a cost to me?
So you're really looking at what is a higher penalty?
Yes.
Can I handle? And basically you're looking at a very real math equation. I can say no, I don't have capacity to talk to her.
But if I do that,
eventually it's going to dysregulate her. So which pain can I handle?
Yes.
Without getting dysregulated?
But if I always say yes, eventually I will get dysregulated. Yep. And then that will cause me to just naturally disconnect, which will then cause more pain. Well, it's constant evaluation of where you're at. And once again, like the plant analogy, taking care of this mutual thing together. It's not about me. It's not about you. It's about this third thing.
Yes. What I love about this is I'm listening and I'm like, this is why there's such a stereotype. It could be women or men because genders are free. But typically in the past, men have hated marriage counseling because it feels like they just come in and they get told all the things they need to do and change. And I think, or wives, it could be either whoever it is. It would feel so much less threatening if you knew the goal was that your needs get met.
Yeah.
And the goal is to meet each other's needs.
Is a mutual.
It's a collaboration. The relationship is we are collaborating together. We're not fighting. We're not blaming. I'm not blaming you for having needs. We have accepted it is every human has needs. Every human has things that cause them anxiety. Every human has things that they react to. We've just accepted that's a part of being human.
Yeah.
And now we are collaborating on how do we negotiate our needs together where we both matter.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's not personal.
Yes. That is literally the number one feedback that we get when people come to us for marriage counseling is usually there's one spouse that's been dragged in and doesn't want to be there.
Yeah.
And by the end of the first session, typically, or a couple sessions, they're like, well, that's different because they're not expecting that we don't play victims and villains.
Yes.
We don't believe in that. We believe in two people who both have needs and in mutuality and fairness and both people feeling safe and secure. And I think when you start to operate that way under that social contract together, it's what is a game changer. Because oftentimes, even if you do counseling or you fix your marriage where one person finally feels seen and they feel great, you can't sustain that for too long.
Yeah.
It bottoms
it's performance-based.
It's performance-based.
And you just swing from pendulum to pendulum. This season's all about him. This season's all about her. This season's all about him. And it creates madness.
Yeah.
So we have 4, under the idea of secure functioning, there's 4 other things that we haven't mentioned. I just want to name them and then we'll go into them in the next episode. But it's really, the next 2 I love so much, which is making and keeping agreements and honesty. And these 2, the balance of these will liberate everyone listening. When you hear it, because individually they sound horrifying in a relationship, but when you put them together, and making and keeping agreements is basically like, when I say I'll do something, I'll do it. And it's paired with honesty, which means, so I say I can't do it if I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
And I'm allowed to do that.
And I'm allowed to do that.
Yeah.
I'm not expected to always say yes. I'm allowed to say no if I feel like I can't do it. But you can count on the fact that if I say I'll do it, I will do it.
Yes. So we have making and keeping agreements, regulating the nervous system,
meeting each other's needs,
and accepting
each other fully.
Yeah. And so we're going to continue going on that. You guys have a great story that will help everybody see how this actually plays out. If some of you are like, how do I actually do this? We're going to give a little bit of a real life example so that people can grow.
Yeah. And if you want to be sure that you get that episode, subscribe on YouTube and hit the bell button. Because if you hit the bell button, then it'll say like, hey, guess what? New episode.
It's ready for you. It's ready to change your relationships. All right.
Relationship fix.
And that's it. We're out.
And if you want to find Pietze and Johnny, you can find Pietze at
Pietze.com.
Pietze.com.
Pietze.com. You can
Or
email
Instagram.
contact@pietze.com.
PIETZE.com.
Also, who
.com.
else do you know who has their first name.com?
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
Very
I mean,
cool.
like,
Kind of a
come
big
on.
deal.
You are the only one. And Pietze on Instagram, you want to follow her. Her family's adorable. Anyway,
Yeah.
thanks for being here, guys.
Love you guys.
Love you
Welcome.
guys.
Love you guys.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.